Hello, my name is Phil Kornbluth, and I'm going to spend the next half hour or so providing an update on the global helium market. So, briefly, I'd like to introduce myself. Kornbluth Helium Consulting is a helium-focused consultancy that specializes in all commercial aspects of the global helium business. I'm the founder, president, and sole employee of Kornbluth Helium Consulting. I've been full-time consulting since August 2015, but I have 43 years of experience in the industrial gas business, including 41 years of continuous involvement in the global helium business. And among other things, I've had global general manager slash P&L responsibility for the global helium businesses of both BOC and the Matheson subsidiary of Nippon Sanso Holdings. I'm a member of Gasworld magazine's editorial advisory board. I speak pretty regularly at Gasworld's conferences and other industry conferences, and I'm independent from the helium majors. So that's my elevator speech, and now let's get to the helium business. Okay, so just a recap of, I want to start with a brief recap of Helium Shortage 4.0. Just as a reminder, the helium market was supposed to loosen up in 2022 when it was expected that the Gazprom Amur facility would ramp up production and end the tight markets. But instead of that, there was an explosion and fire at Amur on January 5th of 2022, and instead of getting an influx of new supply into the market, we ended up in a shortage. And so besides the lack of Amur product, the Bureau of Land Management experienced a major outage from January through June 2022, removing about 15% of global supply from the market. And there were a handful of other supply disruptions coinciding with that period, including some planned maintenance at two of the plants in Qatar, weak supply from Algeria because of the war in Ukraine, etc. and so forth. So the bottom line is we ended up with a shortage, helium shortage 4.0, which continued all through 2022 and 2023. You could feel the shortage beginning to ease, beginning with Q2 of 2023 due to weak demand from the electronics market, demand destruction caused by the higher prices and during the shortage, and eventually the impact of supply from new sources as the Amur project started up in September of 2023, finally. So by the end of the year, by the end of late of 2023, the shortage was over and all of the allocations by the helium majors were lifted by the end of Q1 of 2024. So what's the current situation? Helium supply is plentiful right now, and that's despite the recent 1 month 50% maintenance outage at ExxonMobil, which was barely noticeable because inventory in the industry was at a very healthy level. Gazprom has added around 50 containers a month to supply, so about a 10% increment to supply. Helium demand for semiconductor manufacturing, which is now the biggest application, is recovering from the slump in 2023, but still not at the 2022 level. There's oversupply in some markets, especially in China, where the influx of cheap supply from Russia and weak electronics demand has resulted in what Tom Deng of GGAS, he's the CEO of GGAS, has referred to as market chaos. The Chinese market is little or no profit kind of market right now. because of the cheap supply from Russia. And there are also new EU sanctions that went into effect at the end of September, which have impacted the flow of Russian supply to the EU in particular. And EU companies are no longer allowed to buy from Russia. So some of the Russian supply is being temporarily kept off the market because of the need for Gazprom to replace the business that's been lost due to the new sanctions and force majeure declarations. And contract prices are experiencing what I would call cross currents, and I'm going to talk more about that a little bit later. So but just to say, there are some forces that are pushing prices down, and others that are pushing prices up. So the outlook for the next 6 months, the most likely scenario, at least the baseline, is continued plentiful supply. Certainly a key variable is production from Amur in Russia. If it delivers at that 600 million cubic foot a year level with stability, that would pretty much ensure plentiful supply, but it could be reduced due to the new sanctions, depending on how capable Gazprom is to replace the volume lost due to force majeure. Electronics demand is increasing and it's gradually recovering. A new source in the U.S. is supposed to start production probably, it's either going to be Q4 of this year or Q1 of next year, probably. It's on the Gulf Coast, Freeport LNG. It's about a 200 million foot a year source, and it's a Lindy source. There is going to be a pretty significant price increase from Exxon effective January 1st that the majors will attempt to pass through to their customers. So that is going to give rise to price increase activity by the majors. I don't expect that they're going to absorb what is likely to be a 20% plus price increase from ExxonMobil. But as I said, prices are going to continue to experience cross currents with, you have the cheap supply coming in from Russia. You have a price increase from Exxon. So the Russian supply is a factor that's pushing price down. The overall oversupply in the market is pushing price down, but Exxon's increase is going to push prices up. It is going to be, I would say, turbulent for pricing. I think that, and also I think it's important to say that the helium supply chain is going to remain fragile. And I will talk more about that in a little bit. So a little bit more on the Gazprom Amur project. It's probably going to be the biggest factor affecting helium markets in the next few years. They have 3 plants planned, each with about 700 million feet a year of capacity, totaling 2.1 BCF. That would increase world capacity by a third. So it's really pretty huge. As I've mentioned already, plant number 1 started up in September 2023 and is producing at the rate of about 600 million feet a year, so it's about a 10% addition of supply. The second plant is mechanically complete, but I think startup is going to be delayed, possibly until 2026, due to the impact of sanctions on demand, and that means containers. There's plenty of demand for the helium in China and Asia, but there aren't enough containers available that are allowed to go to Russia to pick up helium to take away the Russian production. So there's a temporary bottleneck there that could delay plant number 2 until 2026. The timing of plant number 3 is subject to demand and could start up in 2027 or even 2028. But there's plenty of potential demand in the pipeline. When the 3 plants are operating, Russia will become one of the world's leading helium suppliers, joining the U.S. and Qatar. It'll be number 3. supply from Amur will have a competitive advantage in Asian markets due to location, and due to the sanctions, geographic proximity, and less complex logistics, China, especially, and other non-sanctioning Asian countries will have preferential access to Russian supply. This map is just trying to show where the Amur plant is located. You can see toward the right side of this chart the Amur gas plant. It's in eastern Siberia, and the helium will be transported either to Vladivostok for ocean shipment to wherever it's going to go. It can also go over land bridges. There are 2 land bridges that go to China, and for shipments to China they would be preferable. And you can see the Power of Siberia pipeline, which is providing the feed gas for the Amur gas plant, and the 2 major gas fields that are providing the gas. One is called Kovykta, and the other one is Chayenda. You see the Russian spelling here, but they're huge gas fields, and that's where the helium-bearing gas will be coming from. All right, a little bit about the impact of the war on Ukraine and sanctions. So, the imports of Russian helium into the EU and the purchase of Russian helium by EU companies were both banned effective September 26th. There have been multiple force majeure declarations by both Gazprom's and Irkutsk oil companies' customers, and those force majeure declarations may take a portion of the Russian supply off the market temporarily until new customers are secured or new containers are acquired. There are indirect sanctions on Russian helium that increase the difficulty and cost of shipping helium containers to and from Vladivostok. Gas companies based in countries that comply with U.S. sanctions are not allowed to send U.S. manufactured helium containers to Russia. That's important because about 85% of the global fleet has been manufactured by Gardner Cryogenics, which is a Air Products subsidiary based in Allentown, Pennsylvania. So that is a constraint on Russian helium. Of course, some gas companies who are based in countries who ignore U.S. trade restrictions are continuing to send Gardner containers to Russia. So it's like most sanctions, there are workarounds and loopholes. Many companies are having difficulty making payments to Russian suppliers, so that's a complicating factor. Some large end users in non-sanctioning countries, in particular electronics companies like Samsung and SK Hynix, are refusing to be supplied with Russian helium. I think it's because they're concerned that they might have a problem selling their chips if they've been produced with sanctioned material. And finally, the new U.S.-EU sanctions plus the lack of containers is likely to throttle the flow of Russian helium for several years and could delay the startup of the second plant at Amur. I'd say it definitely will delay the startup of the second plant at Amur, but I'm not sure how long the delay will last. Okay, the other big project I want to mention to you is the Qatar Energy Helium-4 project. The Qatar Petroleum has plans to increase LNG production from 77 million tons a year to 110 million tons a year by the end of 2025, and then to 126 million tons per year by 2027, and 142 million tons per year by 2030. The helium capacity increase is roughly proportional to the increase in LNG output. So the helium potential from LNG increases from 2 BCF to 3.3 BCF by 2027 and to 3.7 BCF by 2030. The nameplate capacity of Qatar of helium-4 is 1.5 BCF. I think that it will actually produce 1.3 BCF, and the plant startup is in 2027. So that would increase total Qatari nameplate capacity to around 4 BCF per year, and could enable Qatar to surpass the USA as the number one helium producer in the world. So if you add up Amur plus Qatar 4, that's a potential for a 50% increment to current supply of helium, and helium oversupply is very likely. Now again, some of this capacity might be delayed because of sanctions and the market situation, but certainly the baseline going forward is that there'll be plentiful supply. All right, so this slide is just a picture of what's been going on. The gray bars are demand, the orange bars are supply, and the horizontal line is capacity utilization. So it's clear to see that in 2022, 2023, demand exceeds supply. That's helium shortage 4.0. As the Amur product comes into the market and starts to ramp up gradually, supply exceeds demand for most of the rest of the decade, and the surplus is pretty big toward the end of the decade, and capacity utilization falls into the 80s percent range. So the fundamentals say that we're going to have plentiful supply, really for the foreseeable future. However, the other point I want to make about this slide is just to, if we look at where supply comes from between 2023 and 2028, you can see that Qatar's that the U.S. share of supply drops from 46% in 2023 down to 32% in 2028. Qatar stays roughly the same, 37% to 38%, but the big change is that the Russian share grows from 4% to 19%. So instead of two major suppliers of helium, we will have three once Amur ramps up. Okay, so a few comments on the supply-demand outlook. Like I said, while the fundamentals point toward an extended period of oversupply, future capacity utilization will probably be higher than portrayed on the slide because some of the new supply may be delayed due to unfavorable market conditions or sanctions. There will be private storage facilities. Air Liquide has one in Germany. Air Products has one in Beaumont, Texas. Linde supposedly is building one in Texas. Those storage facilities will enable helium majors to build inventory during periods of oversupply and withhold some supply from the market, which would raise capacity utilization. And the helium supply chain remains fragile due to exposure to black swan events. So I'm going to talk about that on the next slide. So the risk factors to the forecast. So we've already talked about the sanctions, the recent 14th EU package of sanctions is having an impact now. And as I said, it could remove some Russian product from the market and or delay the startup of the second and third plants at Amur. Delaying the second plant at Amur is a pretty big deal because that would be another 600 million feet that would swamp the market next year. Plant outages, well, this is pretty big, but it's possible that the BLM system could be shut down if Messer is unable to extend the lease of the crude helium enrichment unit, which purifies the crude helium coming out of the ground before sending it through the BLM pipeline as feed gas for 4 privately owned helium plants. That could remove roughly 10% of supply from the market and would tighten up the market. Where there could be a decision even before you hear this presentation about that could clarify whether the BLM is going to shut down or not. Geopolitical events are another concern. We don't know exactly what's going to happen between Israel and Iran. But if the Straits of Hormuz would be shut down, which right now is not something that I expect, but it's a non-zero probability. If LNG production is stopped in Qatar, then helium production would mostly stop as well, and that would take a third of world supply off the market. So, boy, what a change that would be to the baseline scenario. So, again, I'm not saying that's likely, and if it were to happen, we don't know how long it would last, but is there a 5% chance of that or a 3% chance of that? Yeah, probably there is right now. And then some of the projects that are in the pipeline could be delayed or canceled due to the less favorable market conditions. Certainly, a lot of the exploration startups, some of their projects are going to be postponed or delayed as it becomes obvious that the helium market is plentifully supplied and not in shortage any longer. I believe some of the investment will dry up for the startups. Okay, let's talk about pricing cross currents because a lot of people here are probably concerned about pricing. So in 2024, pricing for new business and renewal business has been trending significantly lower. I think a lot of people were caught by surprise at how quickly the market flipped from shortage to oversupply. The fact that Gazprom has been offering what I would call tier two pricing, tier one prices to tier two gas companies has been impacting wholesale prices, and it's been kind of like pouring gasoline on the fire in terms of accelerating the price decline that we've seen this year. There have been very significant price declines in China and Asian markets, especially due to the influx of Russian helium and the oversupply caused by the weakness in electronics. Contract prices, which helium contracts are very favorable to the seller in the West. Those prices remain at high levels in the U.S. and Europe, and they'll only come down as contracts renew. So it's not like all the prices fall at once. It's over a it's staggered. Let's say maybe 20% of contracts renew per year, and that 20% that renewed this year got lower prices, but contracts that were not subject to renegotiation, they're still at high prices. I've mentioned already that the helium majors are going to receive another large price increase from Exxon on January 1st. It's the result of an RFQ that Exxon did in 2023, when the first part of 2023, when the helium shortage was still going strong. So that is being passed through to Exxon's customers on January 1st. And undoubtedly, the helium majors will try to pass their higher costs through to customers, probably giving rise to price increase activity in Q1. Of course, in this market, there is going to be resistance, and customers will try to fend off the price increases as much as possible. My long-term expectation is that prices will continue to moderate as long as more production increases and the BLM system is not shut down for an extended period. So I kind of see the next 6 months and the Exxon factor as an uptick, an upward move in price that will interrupt what I see as a longer-term downward trend in price. So I think the long-term trend is going to be down, but not first half of 2025. So, in summary, helium shortage 4.0 ended at the end of last year or very early 2024. Helium supply is currently plentiful with oversupply in some markets. The fundamentals point toward plentiful supply throughout the remainder of this year and next. Oversupply is increasingly likely as Amur ramps up and Qatar 4 enters the market later in the decade. Pricing has moderated from recent historical highs, but are subject to cross currents going forward. the helium supply chain remains fragile. Depending on what happens, my outlook could be quite wrong, and even relatively soon, because I don't have a crystal ball, and some of these things that we're looking at are go beyond the helium business. And the risks to the outlook include tightened sanctions on Russian helium, a shutdown of the BLM system, and war in the Middle East. So it's a pretty uncertain forecast. So let's say plentiful supply with the potential for upsets. So that's my presentation. I just want to say thank you. Again, my company is called Kornbluth Helium Consulting LLC. My website is www.kornbluthheliumconsulting.com, and you can reach me at phil@kornbluthheliumconsulting.com. Thank you very much.